Dear viewers, wherever you are, hello and welcome to this new episode of your program, Out of the Box. Secularism, separation of church and state, living a life that is not controlled by religious perceptions, and this would go not only at the governmental level, but it would touch the socio-economic and psychological life of all the people living in such states. Secularism, as a term, was coined in the 19th century, but people can trace secularism to ancient Greece, or even before that, where secularism was partially implemented. So, religion was not in control of politics, but it was definitely widely practiced by the people. And we saw some examples of the Middle Ages as well. Some people would say that, the existence of multiculturals in Spain for 5 or 7 centuries was also a form of a secular culture or secular state. Then we have secularism of the modern times. So what is secularism really? And is it the only way towards a successful modern state? What is the relationship between a state being civil and secular? Again, is secularism or secularity a call for atheism? To answer these questions and much more, I'm really delighted to be accompanied by Ahmad Barsoum, who is the free thinker and writer. Ahmad, hello and welcome to the program.
Muhammad, hello, and again, thank you for allowing us to meet again in your new season of your successful show, Out of the Box. And I'm always delighted to be with you and your distinguished viewers and followers.
Thank you very much for being with us too, Ahmad. It's a real pleasure having you, and I hope that this new season would shed light on some useful topics to our dear viewers here.
Of course, indeed.
So first and foremost, how do you define secularism? How does Ahmad define secularism?
Okay, it's a sort of a free mind or a free of any religious or ideological bound. In other words, it's a neutral mind or a neutral state of a state. So the word secular, usually it is related to a state or a country, which in its definition, it's a land that is occupied with the territory occupied by people and with boundaries. This is a state, and the state is the one that is secular, not the people in it. Although I would go and also say that people should be secular as well sometimes in order to cope with the changes that happens around us. So, but actually, before I want to discuss this issue with you, I would like first to put some light on the state itself before we go to a secular. So, a state in law is a jurisdictional entity or jurisdictional person, which is has liabilities and has also duties, but cannot be part that like humans. They don't have emotions, they don't have inner belief, they don't have any kind of reactions to ideas and to thoughts. Mm-hmm. So we have to make sure that this body is separated completely from a human being. So secular is always associated with this separated body as well.
So you see it as related to what is called the human polity, where the word polis, something that is metropolitan, or acropolis, it comes where the word police comes from and politics comes from.
From the origin of the Greek word, of course, polis.
Exactly. So it's a human polity. It's
a city
Yes.
or place. Yes.
It's a sovereign entity, or that is like, again, it does not have the emotions of a human. It is an entity, or like a group of humans agreeing to live together.
Still, it's a virtual state of a human. So, because a state is not a human.
Absolutely.
It's a virtual human. And that's
Yeah.
why we call it in law jurisdictional person.
Absolutely.
Person that does not really exist like you and me and our audience. So this is the most important thing before even we go to describe the difference between a secular state and non-secular state, or secular person and non-secular person. We have to look at both the person and the state from the law or judicial point of view as well.
Absolutely. And the second thing I want to ask you about is like, very frequently people would use secularism and atheism interchangeably, as if they're synonymous. Where did this come from? Like in popular culture, in many parts of the world, they think that whenever secularism exists, atheism would come always.
That's a common mistake among the strong believers or the strong followers on the fundamentalists in any religion or ideology. It is a way to create fear from the others. So if we say, for instance, as an example, if you go and talk to any country in the Middle East, talk about secularism, they will tell you right away, oh, this is atheism. That means because a secular person is not following a religion or separating his ideologies from the life with other people, they think he is atheist. Because everyone in these regions have to declare his religion and have to admit it and have to show that he has a religion. Otherwise, he is outsider, and otherwise he's another. And then again, he is the atheist. But the thin line, there is no thin line actually between secularism and atheism. Atheism is the non-belief in religion or in an ideology that is followed by religion or religious people. Secularism is neutral. It's a neutral state of mind or state of a state towards the religions. I'm not religious. I am not atheist. I am not a follower. I am not a non-believer. It's just being completely neutral, as if the religion does not exist, and as if also atheism does not exist. And that's the line that we have always to draw. But the guardians of religions, who are always fundamental and always very strict on their belief and strict on their rituals, they always tend to create an enemy. An enemy is opposite to religion, which is atheism. And that's why they cannot see the difference between secular and atheist way of thinking, of course.
Before we go any deeper, let's stop with our dear viewers with this short report about the basics of atheism. Actually, you see, like I was about to say atheism instead of secularism. So we're going to
you can't draw the line even in Muhammad.
Yeah, it's very infectious, contagious, really. Like, you know, it's very popular in the culture. Again, atheism, secularism, and this is what we hope to shed more light on during this episode. So let's stop with our viewers to watch the basis of secularism, not atheism, and we'll be back one more time. Secularism. The separation of religion and state is the base of secularism. Secularism ensures that religious groups do not interfere in state affairs, and at the same time, it ensures that the state does not interfere in religious affairs. Secularism seeks to guarantee and protect freedom of religious belief and practice for all citizens. Secularists want freedoms of thought and conscience to apply equally to all believers and non-believers alike. Secularism seeks to defend the absolute freedom of religious and other beliefs. It also seeks to protect the right to manifest religious belief to the extent that it does not interfere with the rights and freedoms of others. Secularism guarantees the right of individuals to freedom of religion, as well as the right to be free from all religious beliefs. In a secular democracy, all citizens are equal before the law. Religious or political affiliation does not give advantages or disadvantages to their affiliates. Believers, the non-religious, as well as the atheists, are all citizens who have the same rights and responsibilities. Secularism supports equality laws that protect women, LGBTQ, and minorities from religion-based discrimination. In the secular system, everyone shares all services, from hospitals, schools, police, and all other local authorities' services. In a secular system, all state-funded schools must also be non-religious in nature, and children must be taught together regardless of their religion. When a public body awards a contract to provide services to an organization associated with a particular religion or belief, those services given by this organization must be provided impartially without any attempt to promote the ideas of that religious group. It is important to stress that secularism itself does not seek to challenge any particular religion or belief, nor does it seek to impose atheism on anyone. Finally, in a truly secular society, all ideas and beliefs should be open to discussion. Dear viewers, after watching this short presentation through this report about the basics of secularism, we're back again to our discussion. So Ahmad, we watched the basis of secularism according to this report, and again, there's much more to say, of course. Now, during the next few minutes, I will play the role of, I'll be the opposition to you, because actually I invited someone who would be against secularism. So you would be the one who's pro-secularism, and then the other side would be against secularism. But for some reason, they opted out. They preferred to have this conversation or this interview with him separately. And yeah, so I'll respect that. But just to make things fair, I will, be the antagonist here. So you will present
the secular.
Yeah, you're standing with secularism, but I'll present the opposite side.
Well, let's go for it.
Absolutely. So one might say, okay, you guys keep saying that secularism, and to have a secular and civil society and so on and so forth, this is the solution. But is religion really the source of all controversy? So how about something like racism, for instance? So in many secular societies until today, we see a lot of racism, and a lot of research has been done about this through psychologists and sociologists and whatnot, really proving that there are deep roots for racism, and secularism did not really help overcome that. So what do you have to say about this?
It's very simple. Neither religion could fight racism as well. So the racism existed during religious eras and in religious regimes, and also in secular or non-religious regimes. The racism is a tendency of favoring a race over the other, And we can see it in many, many things. We can see it, I would say, for instance, I would not want to offend anyone here, but let's say people from country A with a certain race or origin, they do not like country B. And country B does not like country C. And C does not like A. And in fact, if you talk to different people from different backgrounds and races, you will find them very racist, regardless of being a believer or not, and which religion. So I have seen it in all the Abrahamic religions, very, very obvious. I have seen it in also the non-Abrahamic religions as well. In one of the biggest countries in the world, where they have 70 languages and 70 religions in it, they are discriminating against each other. So it's a secular state, yet discriminating.
So there you go. Like, what does secularism really bring to the state? Because in, just like you said, so in religious or even irreligious or counter-religious states, like we see incidents in China, in India, and so on and so forth. So not only in Christendom or the Islamic Ummah or the Islamic nation, we don't see that only amongst Muslims and Christians, but we see that again amongst Hindus, amongst Buddhists, and amongst even irreligious societies like China. So what is the great value that secularism brings really here?
Okay, so let's go back a little bit in history and look at Europe in the medieval ages, when the church was very violent and tyrant against the people of Europe. And it was actually a torture, not a religion. It was kind of discriminating and a very harsh regime or very harsh processes against human beings in that time. When the Renaissance started to come to existence, and with the rise of the philosophers and the scientists and the painters after the medieval era, more ideas started to go against religion. So it was like the low tide of religion against the philosophical and artistic and scientific ideas that came at that time. So the secular movement started, I believe, in that time, the real one, when they started to call for the separation of church from the state. And that's the thing that created what we know now as the power of, or the crescendo of civilization that we have seen now, based on the idea of separating the church from the state. And that's why I believe that a secular regime or a secular state is providing more of freedom of speech, freedom of expressing opinions. And even the video that we have watched now a few minutes ago, it showed us that secularism is standing at one distance from all people, whether believers or non-believers, and does not interfere in any kind of religion. So in a secular state, you can have 10 religions, different races living together in harmony, where you cannot find this in a non-secular state. If you go to a country in the Middle East, where religious, theocratic country, you cannot express your opinion, you cannot have the freedom of speech, you cannot have the principle of accepting the other, the LGBTQ, for instance, all these things, even though the LGBTQ in some countries with religious backgrounds or religious affiliation, actually, they prosecute those members of those groups.
But again, taking this argument here, like if we talk about the LGBTQ community here again, so a lot of people might argue, actually, the stereotype or the stigma that people hold against the LGBTQ community does not only come from religion, actually. It comes again from norms, from traditions, and so on and so forth. So in many irreligious societies, again, to be from this group or to be from this community is a major shame. It's not a sin. They don't see it as sinful because they do not believe in a God, but they see it as a major vice. It's a major shame. It's so again, like, religion is not the only source of, again, any form of discrimination. So we see in many irreligious states, we see xenophobia, we see homophobia, okay, and a lot of ethnic cleansing happens. So all these things still exist in irreligious states.
I agree with you on that fact, of course. However, if we do a kind of a survey or measure the intensity of people, or the number of people refusing the LGBTQ group in a theocratic state versus a secular state, you will find that the ratio will be maybe 1 to 10. Because the 10 units of a theocratic state, they all tend to reject them because based on religion and traditions and whatever heritage they have. But the 1% or the 10% on the other side of the secular state is driven by their own family traditions and beliefs inherited from previous generations. So still, in a balance, find out the secular state would be more lean with LGBTQ than religious or theocratic state, of course.
Again, here I'm playing the role of the antagonist, so again, one might argue here and say, you know what, you guys always argue and say that secularism and democracy always come hand in hand and one is prerequisite to another. But one might argue, okay, let's take a state like Syria. So Syria is definitely not a democracy in any way, but it's a secular state. This is what the Syrian constitution says. How do you comment on this?
Okay, so he said that what the constitution says, but it is what it says. It's what's written on paper, but it is not in effect. And the biggest evidence we have nowadays that the ISIL has control of many regions in Syria, and no resistance whatsoever happened because people just fell under the theocratic regime right away. So whatever slogans, whatever cliches they have in Syria, claiming the secularity, claiming the neutrality, it's just a way to appeal to the world, to the modern world. But deep inside them, you find lots of fanatic groups, lots of fundamentalists. The Muslim Brotherhood are very powerful in Syria. And in fact, the government itself, they are very careful with them and give them lots of attention and fear from them. They have lots of influence. Even in Syria, I have visited Damascus many years ago, a few times, and I could see the change that happened fast in the society, similar to many places, like in Egypt, like in Algeria, where the religious behavior, religious manifestations started to rise fast on the surface. And I'm comparing to Egypt and Algeria because Syria, Egypt, Algeria, those three countries, they claim they are secular. Still, they do not practice any kind of secularism towards their citizens, because you will see that religion in these countries still prevail over the secular.
Yeah, but like a country like Egypt, for instance, like in the Egyptian constitution, again, the Sharia law or the Islamic jurisprudence, again, is one. So before it was the main source, but now it is, according to with the new amendment, it is one of the main sources.
Main sources, yes.
And so it's not really a fully secular state here. So it did not even.
That's what
yeah.
For sure, that's what I just meant actually. So thank you for clearing this point. I'm with you on that side now, because I'm saying that Syria, Egypt, and Algeria, three countries, they claim that they are secular. Okay. However, they have huge influence of religion in day-to-day life and also in the belief of the people and the government. So the government in those three countries, they tended to play a very fair game with fundamentalists, and we call them Salafis, even the Muslim Brotherhood in some countries, just to keep them away from the power. But at the same time, they cannot get rid of them completely, because they are deep-rooted in many places in the country. And that's what we have seen during the last 40 years happening. It's not something that has been there for many years. It's just the result of the, as we say it in the Middle East, the petrodollarization era.
Yes, I understand. Yes.
Yes. So, but yes, they are the secular country is only covered by secular emballage, like in French, and inside it, it's a religious state.
Yeah. So you would say that yeah. So it is just like an emballage, like just a covering from the outside.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not really something that's really deeply rooted within. Again, another argument would say that you guys always say that you religious people should never be concerned or worried about having secularism, because secularism is not anti-religion. Okay, it is just separation of church and state. But the counter argument here would tell you, okay, let's look at all the secular states in the world and look at the percentage of atheists. The percentage of atheists is on the rise, actually. In a country like Britain today, for the very first time in history, the number of non-believers surpasses the number of believers in Britain. In many countries, in a country like Canada, in many countries, maybe haven't surpassed it yet. But if you look at the youth and the young generation, it might already have surpassed it. So how come you're telling us we shouldn't be concerned as religious people?
Okay, I might say something that will not appeal to everybody, but I will use it, the analogy of the Grisham law of currency. So the good notes take away the bad notes from circulation in the market. When you give the chance to people to speak freely and to express their ideas and feelings and beliefs freely without any persecution or censorship, they will talk about what they are. So those atheists you talked about in Britain or in many other countries, I mean, I believe Netherlands too is one of the highest atheist countries with the highest number of atheists in Europe. They had the chance to express their feelings. But if you go to a country like Italy, you can't have this because Italians still a little bit religious, and even the atheists in Italy will not express their ideas and thoughts freely, because the fear of being discriminated or rejected by others. And I will take the same example as well in a country like Egypt. Egypt, by the culture of it, everyone has to have a religion. And if anyone declares that he or she they have not a religion or they don't believe, they will be discriminated right away from the society. Even it could reach the level of persecution in court and also could be jailed for that. So those atheists in those countries will tend not to speak because of fear of persecution. And the same thing in other countries. In Iran, for instance, Iran has lots of atheists, but no one can talk about it. But you see them talking about atheism and express it, and they talk about it freely in Europe and in North America. You can meet many Iranians, many Egyptians, many Saudis even, outside their countries, express their atheist thoughts. No fear. That's what secular state could provide. It's security and protection and freedom of speech. I believe if a country in the Middle East, a non-secular country, or the wrapped with secularism, but in deep inside is not, would allow freedom, true, real freedom of speech, then you will see that the number of atheists is higher than what we think it is now.
Okay, another criticism here again would be what the French would call la laïcité, which is like, the French version of secularism, and which is seen as a more radical form of secularism, really. So secularism is not affected by religion, but laïcité would be, no, it is completely discouraging. No, like religion should not be there at all. Religion should be out of the picture. So you should not put a veil, you should not wear a cross, you should not wear a Star of David or anything of that sort. isn't this anti-religion? Isn't this like some form of subtle or discreet prosecution of religion and religious people?
Yes, that's a little bit extreme, because I cannot believe a secular state would impose or force people to believe in something else, which is non-believing. So we didn't do anything here. We cannot say that they are better than a country like Iran, because if Iran can prosecute anybody who is not religious, and in France they do the opposite, then we have reached nothing. They are just an opposite face of the same coin. And I disagree completely with this, because it defies the fact of freedom of speech and democracy and freedom of expression of thoughts and ideas. And I wouldn't like to live under such a regime, because I'm still free to say what I want. Like I'm talking to you now with my ideas and thoughts, regardless. But if I may express these thoughts in another country, I could be prosecuted for that, right? So I agree with you. This is not a secularism. This is just fundamentalism, actually, on the other side.
Okay, so it's the other end of the spectrum.
Yes.
Again,
absolutely.
an extreme. It's an extreme.
It's extreme from the other side. Yeah.
Okay.
The opposite side.
So again, do you see that secularism and democracy are a match made in heaven and totally inseparable? So you cannot separate secularism from democracy and democracy from secularism? Do you think that they must come together? Are they prerequisites for one another?
I would say that the democracy is a product of secularism. It's not they come together. Why? And again, I will use Europe in the 16th and 17th century. When they started to realize the importance of the separation of church from state and what positive results they have gained from that, then people started to have the freedom of speech, which created democracy, which allowed the formation of parliaments, especially after the French Revolution, and so the People's Assembly there, and the People's Society. Same thing in Cromwell's Republic in UK a long time ago, even before that, which lasted for 40 years. So it was like a spark of democracy came out of secularism, because at that the Cromwell's Republic was not religious. It was the first time somebody ruled in UK or England at that time without the permission of the Pope.
But again, Cromwell was a big disaster in the end.
It was, but I'm saying that it was a rehearsal. It was the spark. It was just the idea in its cradle. And the ideas, when they are born, they are not perfect yet. But I would use the French Revolution as the main example for that. I would use many examples in Europe in general, that when they had the freedom of speech, they had, because of secularism, democracy started to rise onto the surface.
But again, like speaking of Cromwell and the French Revolution, like these two specific examples here, Cromwell led the people to ask for the return of monarchy. Like they found that we're much better off actually with monarchy than with this like utopia that Cromwell was talking about. On the other hand, again, the French Revolution that was led, like, we have like stories like Les Miserables and things like that. These were like major incentives and sparks, and you had like people like Victor Hugo and those great thinkers and writers. They were like leaders and intellectual leaders of the French Revolution. But what did the French Revolution give us? We got rid of a king to have an emperor. So it was a major setback. We had a major setback. We had a major regression, actually, in both cases.
We have learned from history that revolutions do not settle right away in any country. They go through lots of turbulences and lots of ups and downs until they give us the exemplary model which we were expecting from this revolution. And as we always say, that the revolution is a result of the thoughts of the noble people and the free thinkers. and is carried over by the brave men, and only the bastards could benefit from it. Excuse me, but they are the ones that are not the I would say the proper people to rule. So that's what happened in most of the revolutions in the history. Even the Bolshevik revolution everywhere, China, the Gang of Five, all revolutions in the beginning they had lots of bad doings and unrightful doings to its people. And Cromwell, back to Cromwell, he forced the people to go to monarchy because he couldn't control it because they were not ready for it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Could
Okay.
be ideas sometimes could be very rosy from the outside, and inside it's still
But done
immature.
prematurely.
Yes, of
So, yeah.
course, to give us the effect required from it. So,
Okay.
but so whatever has been going in history was the preparation for the next step, and lots of people have actually sacrificed their lives for freedom, for secularity, for secularism, for democracy. Lots of bloodshed, even against the Nazi in Europe. If the Nazi have won the war, the whole Europe would be now down into a very police state, tyranny, and aggression. But luckily, of course, that the movements in Europe who fought the Nazi and defeated it, and that's why we have democracy now in Europe.
Okay. Again, somebody who's religious might tell you actually, why are you guys so much concerned with religion and you think that religion is a source of oppression and whatnot? Actually, the problem is not religion, but the distorted form of religion that we have received. So, like what the Catholic Church was practicing was a distorted form of Christianity, really. So the Catholic Church today is a major beacon for peace around the world. And we've recently seen the Pope Francis come to Canada and gave a public apology to the First Nations and for the great massacres that were done in the boarding schools and whatnot. So this is the real spirit of Christianity. And again, they would say that Jesus said, let's give what for Caesar to Caesar and what's for God to God. So what can be more secular than that? And Judaism, again, many Jewish people today would say that we truly believe through our religion that everyone has a role in this life. So if you're a Muslim, if you're a Christian, whatever, you still have a role in life and you can still have a place in heaven. Again, Muslims would say that it is clearly stated in the Quran that and God is addressing the prophet, and he is telling him that you should never be domineering. You are not domineering. Your role is just to spread the message peacefully, period. So all the atrocities that were committed in the name of religion is just a misconception or misinterpretation of the text. So why do you want to punish the real religion, which only calls for peace, for love of the other, for care for the other, for all kinds of beautiful feelings, because of a distortion that happened?
Actually, a secular state or a secular person would not ever think about punishing a religion, because if the religion has shown to the people these values that you just mentioned now, those great values in every religion, then there will be no fight against it, or there will be no criticism to it. But on the other side, what happened is that as we said, the church in Europe was against the people, was Inquisition was a very common thing. Judaism in itself, it has discrimination among its people itself, and some fundamentalist Muslim, they carry lots of terrorist acts now. So at the end of this, we find that yes, in the theory of a religion is great, but the people who are practicing it are not great. Actually, they are helping their own interests. They are after their own interests. In
Perfect.
other words,
well, can't we say the same thing about secularism again? Like,
of course, you
the
can.
theory is perfect,
Absolutely.
but the practice can
Absolutely.
be, yeah.
But a secular state is not calling to discriminate or to fight religion.
Mhm.
Because in the again, from the video you played, secular state is based on three fundamentals:
Yeah.
liberty, neutrality, and equality.
Yes.
And if a religion can guarantee those three elements, then of course no problem with a religious or theocratic state.
So just the example we mentioned here, the example of like the ECT, for example, like, this extreme. So
That's
just
extreme, as you said.
yeah, but just like religious people can go astray away from the steadfast path of the true religion, same thing can happen to secular people, and it did happen. Like it can happen, and it did happen with religion. You can go astray and leave the steadfast path that is full of virtues. Same thing can happen to secularism. Can and did happen to secularism in the Franco version of it, for example. So why is secularism any better than religion?
Actually,
It can also go
no,
astray
it's not.
and
We are not here to defend this secularism in the absolute.
Mhm.
Of course, any idea, any practice, any theory has its pros and cons. First of all, second,
It has a
it might
shortcoming like anything, and,
it
and
might
it's
go
flawed.
wrong. It might go wrong during its path. It will
Mhm.
derail sometimes. As
Okay.
we said it before, many things. The French Revolution derailed completely, and it was the monarchy came and went 5 times until we saw the last version of the French Republic. In
Okay.
200 years, 5 kingdoms came and left. Look in the United States; it's the revolution there. Was followed by a civil war, and it lasted for a long time. But many people lost their lives in it because, again, it derailed from its main purpose because of two different. It's the nature of man. Again, we are not defending secularism in the absolute, but also we are not saying that it is equal to a religious state. If it had its downfalls, and sometimes if we do statistics, we'll find that a secular state still more free, more liberal, more democratic, more convenient for everyone to live in peacefully.
But at the end of the day, no matter how beautiful the theory is, the implementation is carried out by human beings. And in both secularism and religious law or like religious teachings. So, on the other hand, like, why, if people are able to make their humanity prevail and they are trying to be as objective as possible, then why not do the same thing with religion too? So why don't we take the common denominator between all religions? So all religions are like against judging others. All religions is calling for like meekness, again, humility, charity, benevolence, philanthropy. All these things are part and parcel of every single religion out there. So why don't we take these beautiful principles of religion and apply them?
Well, I
Like,
don't mind
why are
taking
we
them.
ashamed? Why is there a stigma? Or why are we ashamed of saying this comes from religion?
But again, I will use your words. You said that people who run secular state or secularism are people, and people
Yes,
vary. Same thing,
exactly.
who run religion, people as well. So you will find a very charitable person in a religion and very kind and very peaceful and spreading peace and love among all nations, among all people. And other one is carrying a gun and fighting the other person,
Yeah.
fighting the other. So again, it is people. But if I were informed, or if I knew that we are going to this discussion that extent, I would have prepared some information with numbers about the difference between victims of a secular state versus victims of a religious state.
And
I'm sure that I don't have numbers in my head now. I don't want to come up with any vague numbers. However, in my opinion, through my readings and research and observation, I would say it is percentage is 1 to 5, let's say.
okay,
One
again,
prosecute person versus 5 in a religious state.
again, around last but never least, actually, and the question is this: like, some people would accuse secular states of being major hypocrites. They actually don't practice what they preach, because they say that these states who are secular and democratic are only secular and democratic within their borders, within their boundaries. But outside of these boundaries, they would fully support extremists of all sort and type, okay, and they would fully support dictators everywhere in the world. The same states that claim to be the beacon, that claim to be the defenders of secularism and democracy, are the major advocates and the major supporters of dictatorship and of religious fundamentalism all around the world.
We need someone who is expert in intelligence and in international politics to come join us in this discussion, because we know, I know, you know, everybody knows that these games are played by the politicians in order to serve their ultimate economic and political ambition. So they can use any tool. As you said, it is against countries outside their borders because they don't care. It's very, very centric on their country. And yes, it is a very pragmatic approach. They want to use the slogans of democracy, protecting the democracy, to attack other countries and destroy them.
So there you go again.
We have seen that through history. Yeah. But that does not mean that the model, this model is all about secular state or secularism. This is just a way to serve politics and economic planning and the economic agenda. That's all.
So again, you know, like secularism is always portrayed and you know, depicted as the savior of humanity and whatnot. But so far, secularism did not play a major role in increasing the humanity, actually, but it sort of spreads a lot of hypocrisy. So you say something in one place, but you act 100% contrary to everything you said in another place. So you would still drain and exploit other states, other people. You would give absolute green light to fundamentalists to spread their terror, to spread their reign of terror all around, and you know it and you support it completely. So secularism did not really help in spreading humanity worldwide.
Same as the theological theocratic countries. I will give you a quick example. What's happening in Lebanon? Hezbollah is financed by Iran, and this is a fact. And they mean always to keep Lebanon in a state of chaos and unrest. Is it the same thing that the country like the States did in Iraq?
Yeah, like Hezbollah.
With different, of course, the scale is different, but I mean,
exactly
the same concept. A secular state like the United States used its power to destroy other countries under the name of democracy.
Thank you for mentioning, you know, like Hezbollah, this specific example, because Hezbollah, or like the Party of God, was created in the Iranian embassy in Damascus, Syria. So what a mix, like, you know. So Iran, which is a very, very theocratic state, and Syria, which claims to be an extremely secular state, but Hezbollah, that
secular,
acts on the ground in Lebanon, but actually was created in the Iranian embassy in Syria.
Because the state of unrest in Lebanon is serving the Iranian and Syrian interest. We know that. And that's why they are benefiting from this state of instability, unrest, economic disaster happening in Lebanon. And again, it's in the name of God, as you said, Hezbollah.
Absolutely, yeah.
By the way, I was very straightforward with you, and I told you also the American example. What the United States did in Iraq, And till now, it is not justified. They claim that they are a secular state, but it's not. Maybe it's secular inside the country, but not outside.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking at the whole thing with a very fair vision, actually. But I still do believe that the secular model is more beneficial for the people than theocratic model, of course.
Ahmad, really, thank you very much for being with us here. Actually, of course, if we talk about secularism, we can just talk forever, really. But this is just the beginning of season 2, and we will delve much deeper into a lot of very related topics. So we'll be talking about, religion, atheism, theism, deism, and whatnot. So this is just the start. Thank you very much for being with us here, Ahmad, and really looking forward to having you time and again.
Thanks to you, Muhammad. And next time I will bring the numbers with me. So I'll be ready for you. Because you are a very, very good negotiator.
We're always here. We're always here.
I'll bring my numbers with me.
Birds of the feather flock together. Same are you, my friend.
Absolutely, yes. And thank you, and thank you for all the very honorable, respected audience and followers. And we see you soon in the next episode.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And dear viewers, like if we were to recap or conclude here, really, the ultimate goal would be humanity. And, it is impossible to live in this world alone. Like, we are social beings. And one of the major problems that religion has witnessed over the ages is claiming infallibility to humans. So people might definitely believe in infallibility of text or of a religious figure, be it a prophet or a semi-divine, being. But again, other people who do the interpretation, at the end of the day, what happens is an interpretation of the text. And this interpretation is done by human beings who are not infallible. So they have their shortcomings, they have their weaknesses. So there are a lot of flaws here and there as well. So secularism might not be utopia, might not be the best thing out there, but it's the best of what we have so far. So far, it had downfalls. It has shortcomings. There's extreme versions of secularism. And secularism is not the antidote against all problems humanity is facing. But at least it can be seen as a step in the right direction. But first and foremost, humanity has to prevail. And humanity is, again, related to your conscience. And so the first judge really should be your inner conscience. Again, treating other people the same way you'd like to be treated. And seeing other people as just humans. You do not have to judge by the just the facade, the surface. No. Deep within all of us, we're all the same. We all seek a better life for our children. We all we'd love to live in peace and prosperity. So, stereotypes, stigmas, and bigotry, these are the real big enemies. And once these are out of the picture, then there will be much more hope. Dear viewers, until we meet again, I hope you have a very pleasant time. Thanks for watching.